Hey everybody, welcome to the final week of music notation. This is the MuseScore tutorial that's going to encompass all of the skills you need to be able to do well on the final. The final is a 2-week project, meaning we're going to start it this week. I have certain benchmarks I'm going to ask you to turn in that show that you've made meaningful progress, and then on the second week you'll turn in the finished project that'll have a fully formatted score and parts along with it. All right, let's switch into MuseScore and see what we're actually going to do. So what we're looking at is Sakura. This is not the final project, but this is the test document we're going to use to learn how to do this. So let's take a glance at what we have here. We have a concert band score. It features flute, oboe, bassoon, all the standard woodwinds, clarinet, bass clarinet, all 3 of the saxophone levels. We have all 5 of the traditional brass, and then a handful of percussion, which as you skim through, you'll notice in the MuseScore version of this, I haven't filled in. The main reason I did it is because there was some formatting problems with import, and bottom line, blah, blah, blah. You don't need to worry about it. The percussion import lacks something in MuseScore. All right, so MuseScore has a dual benefit. Well, let me say a double-edged sword. I think that's probably the best way to say this. MuseScore comes out of the box looking pretty good, and it has some really basic, easy-to-use formatting options. But this is where we're going to run into one of its greatest limitations. If you like the way MuseScore looks right now, and I would argue it looks pretty good, that's great, because this is all you get. There's not a lot you can do beyond what we're seeing to make it look professional and publishable. But they've done a pretty good job getting it elevated enough that I think any respectable composer would be content with what they're seeing in front of them. We're going to learn the features. There aren't a lot that we can do. But those limited features are quite powerful, and the end look is going to be pretty good for what it is. For the finale users taking the other portion of the class, they have a lot more customization, a lot more options they can get into to really dial things in. In many ways, though, MuseScore's limitations are also a perk. Let's get into it. So, with these instruments, we're looking at Sakura, a very famous Japanese folk song. It's got, 53 measures in it. It's a ballad. It features a lot of different instruments, but only in one version each. This is a beginning band piece. It's actually a grade 1 piece, which is what you typically play, for your first or second band concert. Lots of things we can do. First things first, we're going to figure out how to copy and paste. As you're doing your final project, you'll be entering parts from another beginning band piece called Black is the Color. And one of the things that will help you out greatly is recognizing where instruments have some similarities. So let's take a look at the flute and the oboe part here. Now, if you've got a perceptive eye, you'll notice that both of these are in B flat, which means they're in the same key. G, G, A, G, G, A, G, A, B flat, A, G, A, G, E, etc. E flat. This is actually the same with the exception of this one note being up the octave. So this is a copy and paste opportunity. I could copy the flute part down to the oboe part and then just drop every note but the E flat down an octave. You'll see as we go forward, that's the case for much of the music. We split up here. Well, it turns out many instruments here have that same property. Flute and oboe are a common one, but other really common ones include the alto saxophone and the French horn. And it turns out when you look at the parts for both of these pieces, the alto saxophone is identical to the French horn part, this horn in F. So I'm simply going to highlight that region, and you saw I clicked the first measure, and then I shift-clicked the last measure of notation. And then I'm going to just hit Command-C because I'm on a Mac. If you're on a PC, that's Control-C. I'm going to click the first bar of the French horn part that I want to do it in, and then Command-V pastes it all in. That would have been a Control-V on PC. Now I want you to notice it's a written E here and a written D here. That's actually the correct transposition for each of these instruments. These parts are still playing the exact same notes. The key here is that even though these are the exact same notes, they're written differently for the different instruments, and MuseScore's taken care of this for you. So that's really handy. Now when you go to enter parts, take a careful look in Black is the Color at the alto part and the French horn part. I think you'll find there's a lot of similarities. Rhythmically, they're identical. That's a big tip-off that you're looking at something that's probably the same in both instruments. All right, another thing that's identical, the tuba part, which is fairly brief in this, all the way over here with just that one last note. Okay, now let's copy that guy. The tuba part is actually the same in the euphonium, the trombone, the bari sax, and the bassoon part. All of those instruments have exactly the same parts. So with that one rapid fire keystroke, I was able to fix so much of this. Now, there are a few small problems, and you'll see that it's trying to help us by labeling things in red that have an issue. But of course, MuseScore helps us with this by simply holding Command up arrow. I can change the octave to the correct range now for euphonium. That's Control up arrow on PC. You can do the same thing over here on my euphonium part. Sorry, I guess this is the trombone part. The euphonium was below. And I can do the same thing on my bassoon part. Come all the way to the end. Oops, I highlighted an extra instrument in there by mistake. Let's start that one over just to be safe. So I got my bassoon part, and I'm going to be careful to grab the bassoon part here. Command up arrow on Mac, Control up arrow on PC. And now everything's in the correct ranges. Oop, I missed one more, bari sax. Bari sax, see those red notes? The red notes is a pretty big tip off that you're in the wrong range. Same exact keystroke. Okay, so now instead of entering every single one of these parts, which is something you could do to do the final exam, it'd take a long time, but you could do it, I instead looked for opportunities for copy and paste. Now let's say hypothetically you do have something like the flute part here. So, you know, it matches a lot, but it occasionally doesn't. Well, I can get in there and I can highlight specific regions. So, you know, for instance, I could just highlight this one single bar, and then with my up and down arrows, I can move the notes by half step to the correct place. So in the event where I have this GAC instead of CDF, I could copy that over. In fact, let's just do that for demonstration. I'm going to copy that note to that note, and I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste right to there. So now I can just use my down arrow, and I can move those notes pretty much in place, and I believe that's exactly the notes we wanted. So as you're copying and pasting, paste the big majority of the area, and then go through and just make the refinements to the notes that matter. You know, this E flat will probably end up down the octave, so I simply move that note up the octave and I'm fixed. All right, I'm taking a lot of time on this because I've had students in the past do the final notation project and make this terrible mistake of thinking that entering every single part is a reasonable thing. What ends up happening is it takes a long time to enter each of these parts and be accurate. When I can do it once and copy and paste, I'm going to save myself a lot of time. I've estimated out it would take me about 2 hours to do the final project I'm asking you guys to do, but I have extensive notation experience. More likely it's going to take you around 3 to 4, possibly longer. You're probably going to cut the time in half from 6, 7, even 8 hours down to 3 to 4 simply by strategically using copy and paste. All right, so hopefully we've covered that. Now, as far as part formatting and score formatting, there's very few options we have available to us in MuseScore, but we have a couple and they're critical. One of the things we want to do is take a look at our score, and we're going to see that things are a little crowded and we got this dumb thing where there's only one measure. We generally like rehearsal numbers on the left, like this 26 is. So there's some things we can do to improve this. If I click the bar right before, well, think of it as the last bar of any given system, then hit enter, it'll automatically push everything to the next area. So I can just do that at each rehearsal marking. And if I don't necessarily have to do it at the rehearsal markings, I just happen to think in this piece it looks really good. Just do that at the rehearsal markings, and I'll just do that throughout. What we end up with is a 9-page score that actually looks really good. I can see each phrase laid out really well. I can see what each section brings. I can easily figure out, okay, at 13, this entry, I have new instruments coming in, and then I have this pickup phrase and so on. Just makes the job a lot simpler. And it looks nice. Everything's nicely balanced. It's not crowded. It's easy to read all of the notation. Now I can go beyond this. I can also check out the parts. To check out the parts, I hit this little parts button up here. Hopefully you can see this. It might be at the far right of your screen. But I hit the parts button and it'll show me every single part that's in this score. I'm going to go ahead and say open all even though our percussion parts aren't filled in, and we'll let you see what happens. So what you should see now is a string across the top of every single part that's in the score. I'll go ahead and close our percussion parts since they're not particularly useful right now, and then we'll take a look at what we have. In each case, we're going to have a layout here that represents the piece. It's already done the multi-measure rests for me, which is nice. Finale doesn't do that by default. And it looks reasonably good. I think if a student were to work off of this, they'd be fine. But I generally like to group things a little bit more elegantly. So I'm just going to make a couple very small modifications. Put those rests in their own areas. Let's do that instead. And if you ever make a formatting mistake, you simply highlight the bar you want to change and hit delete. So I think I'm going to get rid of that one for the moment. We'll try this instead. think this is going to work better. Yeah, I think that looks a little better. All right, and you see now the layout looks nice. All the parts are in a good spot. I go to my oboe part. That's pretty much the same as the flute. Okay, here's another one where it's kind of messy. Let's just simplify this a lot and create some rehearsal mark breaks. And why don't we take it right about there? I'm going to say there instead. These are mostly just intuitive things, making decisions based on where I think the breaks should be to make the part look nice and comfortable and to utilize the space available. I don't love that break. Let's change it there. Oops, wrong one. Let's change it there. I keep doing the forget. In Dorico, you hit the bar after it. In MuseScore, you don't. So that's been causing me just a little bit of a headache, but nothing too major. There, I think that looks a lot better. There's some other tweaks. I might move a few measures around a bit just to make it look nice. But now the bassoon part's laid out really well. And then you just go through and you keep doing that for each of these. So you see the bass clarinet is a mess and so on. So each of the parts, simply using the enter key, fixes the vast majority of the part problems we're experiencing. You know, wherever you feel in your gut instinct things would look nice, you're probably going to be right. You've read enough music over the years to have a decent idea. That's about it. This is about all MuseScore is capable of when it comes to part formatting. You have that very nice feature, and there are some other part formatting features where I can break pages. I can set new sections for like a second movement of a piece or something like that, but that's not necessary for the final exam or for this. So I think we've covered every essential skill. Just to review, the copy and paste tools are your friend. Below this video, you're going to see a list of instruments that typically double each other, such as the saxophone and the French horn, the flute and the oboe. If I have a first clarinet, it's probably going to be the same as the second and third clarinet in spots and harmonized in others, which means I can just move some notes around. Tuba is going to match all the low voices, so you might see bari saxophone and bassoon, bass clarinet, and you may, depending on the level of the piece, also see a lot of duplication in trombone and baritone like we did on this one. Let's see, trumpets. Trumpets are much like the clarinets, will typically all match each other, except for harmonization. Alto sax 1 and 2, same kind of thing. It's going to save you a lot of time. So once you get the copy and paste done, all we really need to know is the enter key to be able to break staff systems into something that looks a little bit more meaningful, which results in a score looking more like this. A 9-page score is, I think, the ideal version of this one. All right, I hope you've got everything you need. I hope you're feeling comfortable in all your skills and are ready for the final exam. Good luck with it, and as always, reach out to me through the inbox if there's any information you need, or if you feel like you're stuck and you need a private lesson down at the computer lab or something. Thanks, everybody. I hope you've gotten a lot out of this notation sequence, and I look forward to seeing your final exams.